Okay, we're recording. It's March 7th, 2023, and this is the Lynn and Lori webinar for March. Okay, we are now recording.
Okay, and Dax says, how can we use CRB to best live in today's upside downness? One, you may want to just give yourself the move command, move into the future, move one day into the future and see, find out what's going to be going on. You can also just look at each thing and, some new law or some new rule comes up or something like that. Fine, move to the results of that and see where it leads. There are a lot of things being done right now that are going to lead to disaster, and you don't have to participate in them. So, and the things that do participate, help you. The intelligence community says knowledge is power. CRB gives you the knowledge. You just have to know to ask the right questions, right?
Yeah, I really, also another point to this is that there was a time in which someone came to me and they were very frightened about a prediction that had been made by a remote viewer regarding the place they happened to be living, and so they were like, should I sell my house? What should I do? And so what we did was we had a number of viewers view that location through time, like, okay, the target is a location, move to this location, in June of 2024. Now move to this location in September of 2024. Now move to the location in January of 2025, et cetera, just moving them to specific times at that location. And the viewers all were like, everything's fine here. Nothing's happening. There's no disaster going on. I mean, they didn't know what the target was. They didn't know why they were viewing it. They didn't know anything. But in moving to these locations, they were able to see that everything was fine throughout the period that this remote viewer had told her that her house would be destroyed and all this stuff. So. Yeah, and then nothing ever did happen, and her house is fine to this day, and it's been many years. So sometimes that's a solution, just as Lynn is saying. I'm really restating what he was saying in just a different way, but you can always face your fears, and take a look at things as a remote viewer, and that often will help, unless what you remote view is something terrible. But the main thing is we don't want to build castles based on fear. It's like building a house on the sand, right? If you build castles.
As an example of that, Gail's group found that the volcano on Canary Islands would erupt, and that it would break that whole side of its 15 cubic kilometers would fall into the sea, and that would wipe out the entire east coast of the U.S. And even the National Geographic department had predicted this. And so we did a bunch of predictions, moved to so-and-so, and found the disasters, real disasters. And people were saying, well, should I move away from the coast and all that? And so Gail did a session on, is there a way to prevent this? And so the answer was she got in touch with the Spanish government and told them, and they stopped the fracking on the side of the volcano. The volcano was already separated by like 4 or 5 feet. They stopped the fracking there, and then the remote viewers started again looking at the changed future, and we started finding out, hey, no problems. And it was the fracking on the side of a volcano that,
Smartest
you
thing.
know, was going to lead to the disaster. So anyway, yeah, just looking into the future, seeing if there's something you can change about the future. And once you change it, then take another look, see if it worked.
Yeah, and if there's a specific place that you're worried about, you can always view that place through time. And
That's
that's what we did, you know, when we had people, there were people who were really scared and wondering if they should sell their houses after that prediction from the volcano. And that's what we did, was we had them, we just looked at those locations where they lived through time and saw that we were, you know, fine. The two locations, what was really interesting was I think those predictions and that whole series of viewings happened in late 2018. And so, excuse me, I had a whole team of very professional, very advanced viewers look at blindly at various locations in 3-month increments for the next 2 years. And the only thing that any of them found was in the Corpus Christi area and the Houston area, that there would be flooding and lots of rain and storms in like June of 2019, as I recall. And this was like, we were doing the viewing in 2018. And sure enough, there were, but it had nothing, of course, had nothing to do with the volcano or anything, but it was just when, you know, they didn't know why they were viewing it. They were just told to view the conditions and report. And the only thing anybody reported that was out of the ordinary is, oh man, there's a lot of flooding and rain here. And they didn't know that their areas were Corpus and Houston, and it was in June of 2019. So I waited and made sure and checked, and sure enough, you know, that turned out to be true.
Well, the volcano did erupt there on La Palma Island, but because the fracking had been stopped, that wall of that whole side of the volcano did not land into the sea, and simply stopping the fracking.
That's great. Thanks, Dad.
You can change the future.
Yeah, that's really good. And so then another question here is, Martin asked, I have severe spinal damage. Can I still remote view? Yes. Sure. Yeah. I think this might also relate, Martin, are you wondering if medications that you're taking would affect your remote viewing? Because just the spinal damage in and of itself, I don't think would in any way interfere. I mean, Lynn has had a blind student who could remote view well. Do you remember that, Lynn, years ago when I was just starting, you had a blind student? And then, you know, we've had students with a variety of impairments who have done well with remote viewing. In fact, even though both Lynn and I have strong caveats for people who have like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia and things like that, I have had students that faithfully took medication for those conditions and were doing really, really well. And they were able to remote view like anyone else. You know, I mean, they did really well. It's when they get off the medications that things get dicey, you know, so that's another thing to keep in mind. If you have medication that you're taking for the spinal disorder, do you remember, Lynn, when one of our students who had really severe spinal stuff was remote viewing with us? Do you remember who I'm talking about? And I remember he asked you that, and you responded and you said, well, if you're used to it, if it's something that you've been doing for years and you're used to it, then it probably won't affect you as you're learning CRV and becoming a remote viewer.
And there are studies that have shown that the condition you learn something in is usually the condition that you'll best practice it in and have the best results. So like if you're a hardened alcoholic and you learn to remote view while you're drunk, you'll probably get your best results being drunk when you remote view from the north. You know, you have to wean yourself off of it. But yeah, we have had all kinds of illnesses, everything else, you know, in the military, and by damn, you're a soldier, do your damn job, you know, and we go ahead and remote view. Yeah. Ingo Swan said, the only time that you can't remote view successfully is when you're really needing to go to the bathroom.
And that
And
makes sense.
and listen, with generals sitting in the hallway, tapping their toe, waiting for the answer, what we found is that the only time that Ingo could not remote view was when they needed to go to the bathroom. We would, and remote view, you know?
Oh, that's cool. I was going to answer Stacy real quick. Stacy, this is a Q&A session for people interested in the science and practice of controlled remote viewing, which is a written, structured protocol that was developed for US military intelligence to separate true intuition from mere imagination. And it is now being used in a variety of applications in the civilian world since it got declassified in 1995. And so this is just for people who are interested in CRV, which is what we call it, controlled remote viewing. So I'm
I
just
wanted to ask a question too. Hello from Spain, honored and grateful to be here. Very basic question. I wondered, what is the difference between CRV and intuition? Intuition is your psychic ability. That's natural. CRV is not psychic at all. CRV is a protocol that helps you access your intuition. And it's an interview and report process. So it teaches you how to interview your subconscious mind, ask it questions. It will use its intuition to give you the answer, and then you report the answer. So CRV is a protocol that lets you use your intuition in a very constructive and very dependable way. That's the difference between the two.
Lynn, do you remember when you used to answer that question saying, well, being psychic is the vacation and CRV is the car that gets you there?
That's right, yeah.
Pavel and I quote that quite often, just so you know. It's one of the famous Lynn quotes. Martin said, I imagine a big challenge is getting authorities to believe the warnings or solutions suggested as a result of CRV. Not necessarily. Some police really are 100% on board, and a lot of, I think the tide is slowly, very slowly, but slowly kind of shifting. What would you say, Lynn?
Yeah, one of the, well, in the military, of course, no one intelligence effort is depended on. You don't send the troops out on any one person's word. And so all of our stuff was put into a big pool with spy in the sky satellites, ground agents, ELINT, HUMINT, signal intelligence, and everything else. And when we came out into the civilian world, getting, even still, you say, I'm a remote viewer, and many police departments will say, I don't believe in that psychic stuff, and we're not going to just hang up on you, you know. And so, like you say, it is becoming accepted because it's been proving itself, not only with police, but also with corporations, with the government, with governments around the world, with organizations and all that. So yeah, the tide is changing. Yeah.
And also, Lynn, I remember years ago, you gave me some great advice. And when I was wanting to work with police and things, and you were saying, well, you can often go to the police department in your town. And this would be after you've become a more advanced viewer, not when you're a newbie, right? Because we've had newbies do this and they end up like Mickey Mouse in The Magician's Apprentice, where they get in way over their heads. And then they're like, Lori, help, I don't know what to do. I'm working on a murder case and I just started learning remote viewing 3 weeks ago. You know, it's like, bad idea. Not a good idea, but Lynn had suggested to me when I was an advanced viewer that if I wanted to work some real cases, that I could go to the local police department and talk to them and explain what CRV is, that it was created by physicists at Stanford Research Institute, that it was that it was utilized by US military intelligence for 20 years. That gives it credibility, and a lot of times they perk up. You know, if you walk in going, "Hi, my name is Madam Minerva and I'm the psychic down at the corner," they're going to shut you down instantly. Whereas if you walk in and, you know, you ask to speak to one of the higher level detectives and you explain that you are, you know, working with this protocol that's been really proven multiple times, and you explain it from a very well-researched point of view, a lot of times they are open to giving you already solved cases that you
Yes.
can use to learn from, and that's very helpful because
Yeah,
you know,
one of the things you do is you say, you know, you don't have to trust me on a present case, but it would help me because I database everything. If you give me, you know, you quote me a already solved case, don't tell me anything about it, and let me do the viewing and come back and see how I did. And that would help me learn to work on police cases, but it would also prove to you what I can do. And listen, if you're just out of basic and you do that, it will prove to them that you can't do it yet.
and I think a bigger worry for us as teachers is your safety. You know, we don't want you taking on murder and mayhem before you're ready for that. And we have a very structured, systematic thing for building people up so that by the time they do take on something like that, they are ready for it psychologically, and you know, you won't get damaged psychologically. That's important to us. Do you want to answer Kirsten's question?
Yeah. This is what's called the medium problem. The medium problem is kind of vast, Kristen. When you remote view a site, you don't really see the medium that it's in. If it's in the air, you don't notice the air. If it's in the water, you don't notice the water. And if it's in the ground, you don't notice the ground. In space, you don't feel the vacuum and all that. But the other part of the medium problem is that when you wind up at the site, you will wind up in relation to the target. Therefore, if the thing is a coffee cup, you may look up at it and here's this huge coffee cup. Looks like a huge round building. If it's an oil tank, you know, you look at it, your normal size, and you look up and you see the same round thing. And your subconscious will tend to get to the size that for it is most important. If the target is a really important thing, your subconscious will tend to be small and see it as big. If it's a really unimportant thing, your subconscious will tend to be big and see it as something small. And so this is part of what's called the medium problem. And one way to do that is when you have that AI and you say, wow, this is tall, give yourself a small movement command. Move 1 inch forward and describe. Generally, what will happen is you will return to your normal size and see it as it is in relation to you now. And so it's a coffee cup, and here it is, this huge round thing. Okay, move 1 inch forward and describe. Oh, you look down and there it is, little. Okay, and so we have found that the one of the ways to correct this is when you have that AI, give yourself a small move command.
And
But it works.
um, Also, if I've never heard of this specific issue before, as far as having your AIs in the wrong, but a site orientation issue. Remember, Albert used to have that site orientation issue where everything was sideways, like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
it was if the photo showed something this way, Albert saw it this way. But he simultaneously, when he would get on target and be on target, he would tip his head to the side at the same time, which was a
Yeah.
micro movement that I would acknowledge by scratching my nose. And and so it was really great because then I would know when he was getting on target. But then inevitably he learned that he had to turn his sketches 90 degrees to the right clockwise in order to have them be more accurate because he had this site orientation problem. But as he continued to do that, it ended up going away. The problem ended up going away, and he
does.
didn't have
Yeah.
that issue
Your
anymore.
subconscious, your subconscious learns. The thing of winding up at the site, laying on your side, or upside down at the site, and all that is another part of the medium problem. And simple things like this is a almost standard thing. You give someone to view the surface of the sun, they're going to see total blackness, total darkness. Have them turn 180 degrees around. Ooh, it's bright. Because you will wind up there facing away from the sun. One time, a Japanese film crew was here, and they gave me the target of ground zero in Hiroshima. And I got this parking lot, and way off in the distance, there was this hill and some little thing sticking up out there. And they said, well, go see what that is. And I couldn't. Because my subconscious was not going to go to ground zero. and that's what it was. Your subconscious is in charge of the session. And it doesn't always see things logically. And so we have found, though, that a small move command will generally correct this thing of your size, your angle when you get there, the medium you're in, and all that. So
yes, and so, well, there's two different issues. One is if you're like in water and you're not aware that you're in water, which I consider a medium issue. And then there's the issue of showing up the wrong size or showing up upside down, which you call in your manual a site orientation problem. And none of those are fun when they happen, I don't think, but when you're viewing, but eventually you can get over them just by consistency in your practice.
That's right.
Things seem to fix themselves if you just stick with it. What happens is some people quit because they go, oh man, I guess I can't do this. And they quit when it's really just a small bump in the road that that for whatever reason it's happening. There can be a plethora of reasons why it might be happening, but like Lynn was saying, his subconscious was not going to look at ground zero. So sometimes there's reasons that these things happen that we have to kind of explore. Like one of my students who was really having trouble with this one target, and it was a sweet little photograph of this man on his knee proposing to his girlfriend, and she just had such a hard time with the target, and it was because she had been proposed to 4 different times in engagements that went badly. So and so she didn't want to look at that target, and she just had a hard time with it. Anyway, that was a long answer to one question, but
that's okay. But your subconscious does learn, and it learns to work with you. And the more responsibility you give it, and the more rights you give it, the more it comes around to knowing what you need. For instance, that thing of not being able to go to ground zero. Over time, all of these medium problems have just vanished for me, with practice and all that. And one time I just pulled a practice target that somebody had sent in an envelope, and it was the dead animal area of the New York trash
Dump?
place, dump, city dump, yeah. And I didn't want to go there. And I felt this resistance. And I said, hey, that's our target. Go there anyway. Okay. And it went. No
Yeah,
problem.
it's kind of like in hypnosis. Sometimes when I used to practice hypnosis for 14 years, I had a hypnosis practice, and sometimes you would ask someone under hypnosis to, remember something, or like if you could do XYZ, what would you do? And they would say, I don't know. And you would say, oh, well, if you did know, what would the answer be? And they would give you an answer. And it's so funny, like it's just a kind of a workaround. But we find that a lot of the workarounds we use in hypnosis work with CRV and vice versa, so so you can definitely work around things. I have found that if I used to sometimes have orientation problems where I'd show up this big at the target, or I'd show up gigantic at the target. And so I just found that sometimes if I just stated, I don't have to do this anymore, but in the beginning when I had the problem, I would just say, show up at the target my normal size. And then I would, and it was like, just, tell your subconscious, hey, I need to show up at the target my normal size, all 5'1" of me. So, so and that works too. Lori asked, do you ever use scrying for remote viewing? I'm curious, basically, because I don't know the process of remote viewing. Lori, actually, I do want to tell you that there is a free class that you can take that's really full of great information. It's a true class. It's 4 parts. You get 4 emails over 4 days, 1 email per day for 4 days. And it has a link to that day's session, which is like 40 minutes long. It's recorded. You can watch it whenever you want. It says this will arrive tomorrow at 9, and people are like, I'm at work at 9. It doesn't matter. You can watch it. You have 10 days to watch the whole thing, and you can watch it at your convenience. But it'll help you with answering a lot of these questions that are, about remote viewing, because it gives you a really good overview of remote viewing. And Lynn and I both have books out that will also really help. It's a great inexpensive way. My books are free on Kindle Unlimited if you happen to have Kindle Unlimited. If not, they're also not very expensive if you wanted to buy them on Kindle, or you can buy the physical books. Lynn's book is, and so they're posting in the chat the links to the free masterclass and to Lynn's book and my book, Lynn's website, my website. So if you have access to the chat and you can see the chat, I believe everyone can see the chat, then you can see these links, and you can get, it's a very inexpensive way to have a great, very thorough introduction, and even get to try remote viewing. So that's very fun. So as far as scrying goes, though, we don't generally use scrying as part of remote viewing. It's a written process where you're kind of just letting your thoughts flow onto the paper in a certain way. So we don't use scrying, but we can incorporate scrying in the advanced levels of remote viewing if that's something that someone wanted to do. We teach people how to incorporate other tools into the CRV process in phase 6, which is the last phase of CRV at the present time. So I hope that helps. And then Kirsten, the answer is yes, things get better with practice, no matter what. That's always true. And then someone asked, am I able to get glimpses? How do I hone in on it? It's really a lot easier than people think. Let me just give a quick example, and then Lynn, I would love to hear what you have to say on this too. But I had a teacher in my class who was a student. She was taught senior English, and she was trying to remote view a target for her first time ever. And she was like, I'm not getting anything. I'm not getting anything. And I said, write down the first 10 adjectives that pop in your head. Forget about the target, just write 10 adjectives down. And she did. And she completely described her target, like very accurately. And she goes, you mean that's it? And I was like, yeah, when you stop trying and you just let information flow, then it really tends to be highly accurate. And you don't have to fight it or try to hone in on it or anything. That usually doesn't work. Usually just let whatever your subconscious is putting in your head show up on the paper.
And asking simple questions, you get, oh, this is really tall. Oh, why is it tall? Oh, well, it's tall to hold up that thing on top. Oh, really? Tell me about the thing up on top. you know, and you get an impression. Just cue yourself to find out about that impression. It's red. Oh, why is it red? You know, simple as that. Yeah.
See, CRV kind of reminds me sometimes of like a hound dog sniffing the trail, finding one thing that leads to another thing to leads to another thing. Once I was working on the cause of an airplane crash, and and I'm describing stuff in the plane, I'm describing this and that. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, something's failing. And the monitor says, oh, move to the failing and describe, so it's like you can just move from one thing to another, and you get closer and closer to the crux of the issue. If you start off a ways off, it doesn't matter. It's always amazed me how self-correcting CRV is, Lynn, just how it'll just, you can be way off in the beginning and end up amazingly accurate by the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Lynn, do you remember we were talking one time and you said, well, the first 10 pages are usually garbage. And I was not, and I've learned over time that a lot of times my first 5 pages often end up being way off, and I don't even worry about it. I consider that my warm up, I'm just warming up, and I don't worry about being off because I know I'll get on. I just trust that, I could start off completely over here and the target's over here, but I end up finding it after I warm up a little.
Yeah.
Denise asked, is the ranch close to being open to classes?
No, we need more funding. We need more funding to get the road going. We're in the process of building the infrastructure, insulating the building that's there, and finishing off a room, for training and research that's inside that building. And the building that's there is just vacant. And so we're having to build inside of the building. And it's not only costing an amazing amount, but it's also getting people to work. People just don't want to work these days. And you can hire very bad people who will work and do bad jobs, but that's not what I want, So we need more funding. We need more availability of workers. The road to the ranch from the highway is about 2 miles. And there's only one person in town who has a grader, and he's asking $200,000 to just scrape the road. That's not pave it or anything, And so, we're not getting the funding that we need, and so it's going slower than we had hoped. Yeah.
Silky asked, remote viewing seems to affect the psyche of some people in a severe way. Some people seem to get megalomaniac doing remote viewing. It's hard to work with such people. And how do you deal with that? And let me just say one thing really quickly. I was talking with Mel Riley a couple of years ago. Mel passed away in 2021, but a few years ago, he and I were talking about this. And he was talking about how it's easy to fall into a God complex, where I'm going to try to view the next big event and see if I can prevent it, which he felt was really not a good way to go about he felt it wasn't a good way to use remote viewing, because he said, when you do that, you're trying to play God, and that's not our job. And so if I do run into that, which thankfully I don't run into that very often, but if I do, nowadays, I would definitely say, hey, we're not God. It's not our job to try to anticipate and then try to prevent events. Personally, I just feel like, I agree with Mel. I don't think that's a good idea. That's personally my opinion.
I think it's a good idea if it's for helping people. Like
I guess that's the thing. What does helping people mean? Like who are we helping and how are we helping them?
Yeah. Just like, okay, how can we prevent La Palma from sliding into the sea? Oh, contact the government and get them to quit fracking, that saved lives. And also for your own future. Yeah, I see myself 5 years from now laying in bed dying of cancer. Okay. How do I change that? Hey, go see a doctor, you know.
Yeah.
And so there is a constructive use of that. The ego is the thing.
Yeah.
Many, many times a person will get ego bound and get that God complex. Other people will see the enormity of what the mind can do and what the possibilities are and get humble. And it's remote viewing is like the old thing with a gun. It's not good or bad in its own right. It's how you use it. And if you use it to bolster your ego, it's not good. If you use it to help yourself, your family, your neighbors, your friends, and the world, yeah, it's a good tool to use. And the difference is if you have it as your ego, it's you doing it. If you have it as a tool to help, it's you using a tool that God has given you, and that's the difference.
Yeah, I agree. So it's like anything, church, politics, schools, corporations. There's going to be megalomaniacs everywhere you go. There's going to be megalomaniacs. I just personally, and like anything, you have to just work around certain personalities and their things. Over time, what I learned was that I learned not to hinge anything on other people's approval or other people's apron strings, and you have to just kind of forge your own path. And if there's megalomaniacs around you, well, they've got their own path. Just stay on your path and focus on that. That's my advice. That's what I had to learn the hard way. So I hope that helps, Silky. Then we have, what are your thoughts on electronic apps like Russell's ESP Trainer or Stargate ESP?
It's good practice. One of the things you'll find out about electronic apps is they are not random. They're pseudo-random. And so it's like you say, okay, I'm going to affect that random number generator. In the computer, it is hardwired. You're not going to affect that thing. If you have a real random number generator picking targets or doing anything like that, yeah, that can be affected. But the electronic apps, your phone, your computer, and all that, those are hardwired. And you're really not going to affect those.
Okay, that's good to know. So, but they are fun. I love Russell's ESP Trainer. They're really fun. I don't know if they really, I learned that there's a few tricks to getting around Russell's ESP Trainer. I learned it from my granddaughter because I showed it to her. She was like 5 and she goes, oh, fun. And she starts going with her fingers. She wasn't really choosing anything. She was just kind of tickling it. And you need to go to Las Vegas. You're super psychic. And, and so I tried it. I was like, and it bing, 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 oh, you're super psychic. And, it wasn't where I was actually trying to discern which square is going to have the photo behind it, so I personally, it's not like something I would tell all my students, you should really use this app, it's going to help you. What will really help you are the exercises that Lynn created however many years ago it was. Lynn, I won't even ask you because I don't want to embarrass you, but no, I'm just kidding. How many years ago did you, no, Lynn created.
That was back in the winter of 1812.
Yeah, yeah. Lynn created this amazing series of exercises that are really very useful when you take what you learn, you make things habitual in these exercises, and that carries forward into your viewing. That if you want to improve your remote viewing and your psychic abilities, read Lynn's book, The Seventh Sense, where he shares those exercises and do those exercises. I also share some of those exercises. I think I might share all of them. I'm not sure, but I share some of them in the free class. So those are, this is all, there's a lot you can do to improve your psychic ability. And believe it or not, it's not nearly as woo-woo as a lot of people think, like, oh, I can improve my psychic ability by, doing certain things. You can do some very practical, down-to-earth, grounded types of things to really improve your psychic ability.
And the apps too. What generally happens is the numbers that come up or the cards that come up and all that are hardwired. But in practicing it, what will happen is you will start predicting what the next card is. You're not making it come up, you're learning to predict. And so it does have some instructional ability to help you predict. But as far as PK, psychokinesis, you're not going to affect that card. It's like you shuffle a deck and you say, I want the next one to be a 6. It's not going to change whatever it is just because you want it to.
Right.
What will happen is you'll start predicting, oh, it's a 6,
My daughter, one of my kids, number 4, we'll just go by numbers. Number 4, she years ago, she was, I don't know, she was a teenager, an older teenager, but she correctly predicted 51 of 52 cards as far as red and black goes. But I think there was some beer involved. I was in the room, but I do believe there was. We were celebrating my nephew graduating from boot camp, and I know there was some drinking games happening, and that's when she did it. And I was like, I wonder if the beer influenced that accuracy level.
There's an experiment we need to try, right?
We need to try that. We'll have to see. Hugh asked, what's the next big event in this country? And Hugh, I haven't done a session on what the next big event is in this country. So I can't answer that like right now. It's not like we're psychics and we're just going to be like, oh, the next big event is CRV is a process. It's a procedure and a set of written protocols. And you sit down and you have a target, and usually you need to be blind to the target, because if you just ask me what's the next big event in this country, I could make up who knows what, right? I could say, oh, the next big event's going to be blah, blah, blah. But what I found is that if you use CRV and you're blind to the target, your accuracy is a lot higher than if I were just to go, what is the next big event in this country? And again, we don't want to try to play God either and, try to anticipate what's the next big event. Like also, what does big event mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? So I've been mistasked at times with like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen in the next 3 months? Well, worst in what way? Like by the number of deaths, by the the economic impact? What do you mean by worst? So by next big event, who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. And then we have, Maria asked, do we have any big surprises in the ARV course? Not really. We didn't have any big surprises, except for how many people were in the class. That was a big surprise for me, because a couple of days before the class, we had like 5 people signed up. And then we actually had 36 people in the class. Lynn, I should have called you. I was like, whoa. That was the big surprise as far as I was concerned. And then we had Janelle. I'm trying to get through these quickly because we now have like 40 questions and we only have 15 more minutes. Janelle said, I've taken your webinar before, and for this, your first Zoom, I invited an interested friend. Can you both touch on the difference between CRV and remote viewing? Can I just answer that really quickly, Lynn? that one. Remote viewing is a generic term like martial arts, so if I said to you, hey, Janelle, I'm a black belt, I'm a 10th degree black belt in martial arts, your first question would be like, well, what kind of martial arts, right? Remote viewing is a generic catch-all term for anything psychic, really. People say, I'm a crystal ball remote viewer, I'm a palm reading remote viewer, I'm a, whatever, but anything can be called remote viewing. But controlled remote viewing is a very specific technique, and it's a written set of protocols designed to help you kind of compartmentalize various pieces of information so that you can truly give a description of, or a solution or something that you're looking for at a target, or that someone needs the answer to, that you wouldn't be able to get or obtain via normal means. So it's like saying the difference between martial arts and taekwondo. That's I hope that helped. And then we have, what's the best way? This is Janine. Jeannie? What's the best way to learn CRV? I've been working on strengthening my chakras and tapping into my third eye, and I can feel my energy starting to build and grow stronger, but I want to learn how to remote view. The best way is take a class. Really, that's the best way. You can start with the free class and see if it feels good for you. Because some people will be like, oh, that's too much structure for me. Other people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what a great technique this is. And I just want to say, Jeannie, that I am not a very structured person by nature. I don't know how Lynn had the faith to teach me, because I look back now and go, oh my gosh, I'm sure I was a very challenging student. Because I was very right-brained. And so it was really hard. And I also have attention deficit disorder very badly. And so my structure would keep going off and going off. And I think the only reason I have perfect structure now, after 15 years, Lynn was like, wow, I saw one of your sessions and your structure was perfect. I'm like, yeah, it's been 15 years. If I can't learn it by now, there's something wrong with me. But this is a very down-to-earth technique. We don't think about the third eye or chakras or anything while using CRV, because it's a very down-to-earth. It was created for the military. They needed uniformity, and they needed to be able to teach it to anybody, even including the person who said, I'm about as psychic as a bag of rocks, right? That's what they needed to. So it's based on a written structure. I hope that answered that. I hope that's helpful. Amanda asked, what emotions are connected to CRV? Lynn, you want to answer that one?
All of them. When you actually get your mind to a target, you are going to need to realize the difference between your emotional reaction to the target and the emotions that are at the target. And this is part of the training. This is why you get training. And but listen, if everything in time and space is a target, every emotion you've ever seen, felt, observed, anything else, you're going to run into. Yeah.
Yes. And and here's one for me. Denise asked, what age is a good age to introduce young people to CRV? My youngest was, I think, 3 or 4 when I started getting into this. And we did a lot of fun, age appropriate things with him. And I had an 11-year-old who I found a session that my son, who is now close to 40, that he did when he was 11. And so I think you can do age appropriate type things with children very young, and because they're extremely psychic and they don't have all the barriers and obstacles, but also as they get to that age around 12, that's a really prime age. I think 12 is a great age because they're starting to go into puberty. And that's when a lot of really psychic weirdness happens in children's lives, that their parents, depending on who the parents are like, that's of the devil, or you stop that, or, whatever. They try to squish it. So for me, in my opinion, I think we should have this as an option in all schools, especially in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade, in that area. That would be so helpful. I would have loved to have something like that when I hit puberty and stuff started flying around my room. And, there was all kinds of psychokinesis happening in my life at that time. And all my whole family thought I was, possessed or bringing weird spirits into the house. And I've since found that no, this is actually a family trait. Some of my kids also inherited it. When there's a high level of emotion, one time I was really mad at my former husband, and we had guests in the house, and I couldn't go and yell at him because I had to behave. So, and I was sitting in the bedroom with the door closed, and I was just seething with anger because I just was so angry. And he had his own closet in this particular house, in this particular bedroom. We each had our own closet, and he had his closet, and his door was closed. And suddenly there was all this racket inside his closet. And I opened his closet, and there was stuff flying off the shelves and everything. And I realized it was my anger that was causing it. So anyway, all that to say, though, a lot of kids that, around the age of 12 experience high strangeness, and it would be a great time to teach them CRV, I think. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And if not CRV, at least encourage their psychic ability. Don't squash it. You have that psychic ability for a reason.
Yes, it's just, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's another sense like seeing or hearing or tasting. It's just a sense that we were given, so there's nothing wrong with it.
When I went into the military unit, I had these PK events all my life, the psychic events all my life, and squashed them. And Skip Atwater went through this little exercise with me, and it wound up, he said, describe the room around you and all this. And I described it. And he said, there's one thing I want you to know. In this room, it's okay to be psychic. And it felt like a ton of weight was just lifted off my shoulders. It really is okay to be psychic.
That story makes me want to cry. That's beautiful. That's such a beautiful story. Malcolm says, does collective viewing, for example, 6 viewers having more credibility than individual viewing? I'm referencing the latest intermediate session from Lori. Malcolm, let me just explain for the many people here who were not a part of that. We have a club called Club PRV, which stands for Practical Remote Viewing, and it's the same thing as Controlled Remote Viewing. But in our club, it's like a mentoring club for my students, and each level of students, they get like the basic level and the intermediate level and the advanced level. They have monthly assignments, and then we meet and we go over those assignments, and it's just a way to get mentoring. And so in our last intermediate for February, the target was all of a sudden my brain, Havana syndrome. The target was Havana syndrome. And the students were completely blind. Initially, they were not given any front loading, just the coordinates. And then after about, I think, a week or two, then we gave them mid loading of the target is a condition, describe the target. And then about a week after that, we gave them some more mid loading. You could also call it back loading if you wanted, but we asked them to move to the source of the condition and describe. And the results were absolutely fascinating. And most of the viewers got very similar results that were pretty incredible. And so, the answer to your specific question, Malcolm, just because 100 viewers say that the car was red and one viewer says, no, the car was blue, doesn't necessarily mean the car was red. And so, Lynn, you would probably be better at explaining why that is.
It doesn't mean it's blue either.
Right.
One of the things is that if your subconscious mind is wavering and in describing the target, and you're in a collective, in a group that's remote viewing, what it will do is it'll go say, well, what are the others finding? And if the others are finding the wrong thing, you'll find the wrong thing too. This is one of the things we learned about. Never let anybody know that you are remote viewing the same target as Joe McMoneagle. Because you're not going to view the target. You're going to, hey, Joe's the best viewer in the world. What's he doing? And he makes no bones about the fact that he's wrong 50% of the time. So if he's wrong and you're viewing what he's viewing, you're going to be wrong too. And so, so there is that problem with working as a group, but generally with training and with setting a track record for yourself, you will get to the point where you don't care what anybody else is finding. This is what I find. And that's when you're a good group member. Yeah.
That's very good. Jean, I don't remember anymore. I stopped using it. It stopped coming and I'm no longer using that one anymore. She's asking about an ideogram I had a long time ago. Silky asked, Lynn, you predicted remote viewing is going to have a bad reputation in the future because there are no secrets anymore. If remote viewing is getting accepted, it has the potential to change political landscape and the power structure of society. Is it still possible this might come true in the future? Or is that something only happening in non-democratic countries in the future?
No, in fact, in non-democratic countries, it's actually becoming for the government more acceptable for them to use, but not for the populace. And I think we all know that our attitudes on everything are swayed. And I still see that there will come a time when the politicians realize, oh, we can't lie anymore. And so there will be, news articles about some disaster that happened because of remote viewing, and preachers will start preaching against it. You're going to hell, and all this. I know that there was a time there in El Paso when there was a guy that had killed somebody, and the newspaper came out, ex-soldier kills somebody. Come to find out, 30 years before that, he had spent his obligatory 2 years in the service, got out, hadn't been, but ex-soldier kills. Yeah. And we all know that the news and everything is totally biased. And I think there will come a time when that bias will be against something that will keep politicians from lying, and so on. Yeah, I still think it's going to happen.
I would love to see it get in schools. I don't know that that's ever going to happen, but I would love to see that happen. Thank you, Jeannie. Jeannie was asking, was the target for the free class made easier? No, not at all. The difference though, Jeannie, I think what happens is the more people that view a target, the easier it becomes to view. So because thousands of people now have taken that free class, I think it does become easier to view simply because we actually create in collective consciousness where we're all connected, we create kind of memory paths. Think of somebody hacking through the forest with a machete trying to create a path. It's hard for the first guy. It's easier for the guy behind him, and then easier for the guy behind that guy, and easier for the guy behind that guy. It's kind of that idea that in the collective consciousness, if everybody's viewing the same target, we got thousands of people viewing it, it becomes easier to view. Just like in the idea of morphic resonance, which is based on the 100th monkey theory. If you've never heard of it, Google it, the 100th monkey theory. Basically, the more people that learn to do something, the easier it becomes to do, if that helps. So we'll answer that one. Next, I recently read about a disagreement regarding ideograms. There's a Paul Smith approach versus the lexicon approach. Actually, that's been much less net lately, Karen. It used to be a big issue. now, it's not really that big of an issue anymore. Lynn taught me a certain way, and people call it the lexicon approach. I don't agree with that it should be called that. It's a great way to do it. And then I learned from Tom McNear, who actually, it's funny because Paul Smith has frequently said that his method is the Ingo method. Tom McNear also learned from Ingo and told me, no, there's a bunch of things that Paul does and Ingo never taught me, So what I found is Tom was taught by Ingo, Ed Dames was taught by Ingo, Paul Smith was taught by Ingo. But if you learn ideograms from those three guys, you'll learn them three very different ways. And then Lynn has an even different way. But now what I do when I teach, I actually teach both of the main ways, the way that Paul says Ingo taught it, the way that Tom says Ingo taught it, and the way that Lynn taught it. Because guess what I found out in doing testing with people? I found that people who are more left brain do much better and get higher accuracy with the way Lynn teaches it. And people who are more right brained often do better with the way that supposedly Ingo taught it to Tom. And I don't know about Paul Smith because I've never taken a class with him, but I do know what Tom taught me as saying, this is how Ingo taught me in ideograms. So
Tommy gives Paul's ideograms as an example, that after you do so many targets, pretty soon your subconscious is going to learn, because it's talking to you through your body, it's going to learn a certain pattern for telling you a certain thing. Okay, if you go out and constantly get into fights, you're going to learn when somebody gives a roundhouse swing, you block it, okay? Or you can take karate, wax on, wipe off, and learn it ahead of time. And so one way is to set up the patterns in the beginning, teach your subconscious that communication. The other is to just squiggle and let your subconscious teach you. And both ways work. But either way, as you work and as you do it, you're going to establish patterns in your ideograms that become dependable. So the argument was a big argument that had no meaning at all. And it was called lexicon, it was called a language, it was called, oh, Lynn's trying to teach us no, it's not a language, it's only one part of speech anyway, Gestalt. And so, but it is a line of communications, just not that much different from American Sign Language.
Yeah, so that's great. I'm just answering a few by hand here. And Kirsten said your answer was really helpful. Thank you. And then Karen said, you've both been doing this for years. Do you still do ideograms to do a remote viewing session? Oh my gosh, yes. In fact, Karen, over time, I found that ideograms have become an integral part of my life on a day-to-day basis throughout the day. Ideograms are really just the most magical thing in the world. Lynn used to tell me that when I started taking CRV from Lynn. He would say ideograms are amazing. I could teach for 2 weeks on just ideograms. And I kind of wondered, like, why? Like, why is that? And it took a while for me to catch on, because I used to think I was the brightest bulb in the pack, but quickly studying with Lynn was very humbling. And I was used to being the smartest person in the room until I started studying CRV with Lynn, and often found that I would be like, people be talking about like waves versus particles. And I'd be like, what are they talking about? There was so much I didn't know, because I came from a very cloistered, secular cult experience, and it was kind of weird. But so I was kind of sheltered, and there was a lot I didn't know about. But anyway, ideograms are very key. And I once got a session from someone who supposedly was an advanced remote viewer who did not use ideograms anymore. And the session was complete garbage. It looked like somebody had just puked a bunch of words on a page, and there was no meaning to it whatsoever. And I said, what is this? Where's your phase one? And he said, oh, I never cared much for phase one, so I just don't do it. If you don't do it, you have no foundation for your session.
Right.
And that's why we put a ton of emphasis into the first 3 days learning phase 1, 2, and 3, because that is more important than anything else you'll learn your CRV. You know, I teach all the way through Beyond Advanced, CRV for professional viewers and all that, but nothing is as important as that basic class.
Right. And
So
it gives organization to your session too. You start off and you don't do that stage 1, and you just getting random stuff in and, you know, all that. But you start off in stage 1 and you say, oh, there's land, water, and man-made. Okay. Now, tell me about the land. Now tell me about the water. Now tell me about the man-made. And your session is immediately organized, and it gives structure to it, and it gives structure to your subconscious mind, which normally doesn't have structure. And so this is the whole thing about controlled remote viewing. It puts the viewer in control of the remote viewing.
yeah, that's really wonderful. Let's see, Debbie says, in the 6-week course, you talk about practicing wherever you have the opportunity, the park, the bus, the subway, but when working on a target, you saying your thoughts out loud. Do you always need to say everything out loud? That's a great question. And she's talking about where in the free class, I talk about, you know, that initially you want to have a special place where you view, where you have permission to be psychic there. And that eventually you're going to want to try moving around a little bit and become more versatile, and so that you can develop the ability to remote view on demand wherever you are, because versatility is the greatest ability you can have as a remote viewer. You don't want to be a prima donna who's like, well, I can't remote view now because I don't have all the perfect conditions. You know, you want to be able to be really robust as a remote viewer. So I tell people, always do everything out loud and involve your body as much as you can, because this is a physical martial art. But if you're in a situation, for example, on an airplane, I would not recommend doing it out loud at all on an airplane. And I've done lots of sessions on airplanes, and I might kind of, you know, very quietly be kind of going, but I'm not going to do it out loud. In a bus station, it probably wouldn't matter.
Yeah. If you're in church and you're bored with a sermon, so you start doing a session, don't do it out loud.
Yeah. So use common sense, in other words, just common sense, but preferably out loud whenever you can. Let's see, Lori, I'm sorry, I don't know why you can't see the chat. Maybe no one can see the chat. I switched it to everyone, to the everyone view, so hopefully you can see it now. I don't know. Then
If you're on an iPad, you may not be able to see the chat.
oh, it says chat disabled on my PC. Okay, so maybe it is disabled. That's a shame though, because we do have a lot of
chat is disabled, but the Q&A is working.
right, but the links are all going into the webinar chat. So if they can't see the chat, they can't see the links. That's the only problem. So I don't know. Yeah, so Lori says, I have Kindle, I only have the Q&A chat. Okay, so I guess it's not showing up. That means we're still learning this, guys, so appreciate your patience, but we will read all the instructions very thoroughly before the next meeting, so we'll really have this down by then, I promise. We've been kind of like the guy on the family road trip who refuses to stop and ask directions. That's kind of where we're at right now. But so if you can't see the chat, I apologize. I wonder if I could copy some things right here and just put them here in this. I don't think so. I don't know. I thought maybe I could copy it, and let me see. I'm going to try copying it and putting it. Oh,
yeah, it's working out, Lori.
Oh, it is? Okay. Can people see it? Can you guys see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. I did change it to everyone. Let's see. I'm going to go take a few here. Okay. She said she just had to refresh her page. Great. Okay. Then let's see. Oh, reading Lynn's book. I'm at Lynn's OBE training. Do you have an OBE training, Lynn?
Not training, no, I don't think. Listening
I'm
to the same gateway tapes. Oh, yeah. I had, of course, going to the Monroe Institute, I had the OBE training myself. I don't train that in the book, but yeah, it was a really amazing thing. If you get a chance to go to the Monroe Institute, do. And it's sort of a gamble here, but from what I've seen, if you wait to sign up until about 1 or 2 days before the course, it gets cheaper.
Really, really? Oh my gosh,
Yes.
thanks for telling us that.
If the course is not full. You wait and you wait and wait and wait, and then the course is full, you don't get in. So it's a gamble, yeah.
Yeah. Let me just see if we can answer a few more real quickly, unless, do you need to go, Lynn? Because we are over time. I don't know if you need to go.
Oh,
Okay,
fine.
just real quickly, because we have a few more. Martin, I don't know if we want to really get into bilocation. We usually answer that question at almost every meeting we have about bilocation. And there's two different definitions of bilocation. According to Tom, Ingo considered bilocation where the viewer is completely aware of sitting at the table, writing on the paper, but also aware 100% at the target as well, and is therefore in both places at once. And Ingo encouraged that, but he did not encourage the kind of bilocation where you completely lose awareness of your surroundings and are 100% at the target and no longer even aware that you're sitting at the table. But that's a really fun thing when it happens, and we love it. But Ingo didn't like it because you stopped reporting, and the whole purpose of CRV is it's an interview and report methodology for getting and gathering intelligence. So that's a very quick answer, Martin. But I'm just, because we're kind of low on time, I'm just going to really quickly. This is an interesting question. Tommy asked, there are stray cats that evoke childhood memories that surface, and then they have a different flavor to them than generic stray cats. Do you have any advice on how to proceed when stray cats are more childhood related?
Well, sure. Go to the right, write them down, come back to the left and start working the target.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Sorry. I guess I didn't turn my notifications off, my phone's off. Anyway, go ahead. So would you repeat that then, just for everybody?
Yeah.
Since
Yeah, you get a stray cat, you move to the right side, you label it as a stray cat, write it down, and then you come back and you move your mind back to the target and keep working the target. And when you write your summary, then you may write in the summary, that reminded me of such and such in my childhood. But do not let the stray cat distract you from working the target. That's it.
Yeah,
don't let it derail you. No.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is that it can be really easy to fall into getting completely tripped off into some of this. The pot gets stirred, the subconscious pot gets stirred, no doubt about it. But you can do the set aside process and say, well, I understand that this thing happened when I was 3 years old, but right now I'm trying to view this target subconscious. So how about if as soon as the session's over, I will take care of this and I'll really look at it. But for now, I'm not worrying about it. For now, I'm setting aside this incident that happened when I was 3 years old. That's a good way to set it aside, Tony. Okay, and Glenn, there's no real optimal amount of times to take the coordinates. When I'm working an operational target, I usually take them at least, usually 2 to 3 times. That's kind of my average, is 2 to 3 times. What about you, Lynn? As far as taking,
I take it 2 or 3 times, sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 times. When it starts repeating several times, I take it again and again, and I get the same exact thing. I know that's my subconscious saying, hey, I've told you, ask me again, I'll tell you the same. Move on to stage 2. Yeah. So that's your subconscious telling you it's time to go on.
So that's good to know. Well, I guess the questions, we still have 40 questions. I've been trying to get it down, but it just keeps staying at 40. So I don't think we're ever going to get out of here alive. But oh, Malcolm Larson says, for $200,000, I will come from South Africa to grade your road, Lynn.
Yeah.
Let's see. And
probably do it better than anybody here. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we did answer that one. All right, so folks, I am so sorry because an hour doesn't give us much time. We've actually been going for an hour and 15 minutes, so we better go ahead and sign off here. We will be back though. We're going to be back next month on, I'm going to look it up really quickly. Next month on, I believe it is it's April 11th.
Yeah.
April 11th is when we will be back on. I'm going to sneeze.
Is it-
Thank you. I didn't want to blast your ears out. So we will be back here April 11th, guys, and there will be a new Zoom link. If you'll notice on the website, all the links that were previously there are gone because we got off Easy Webinar after having 2 webinars in which the chat didn't work. We're just like, okay, and so we got off and we switched to Zoom webinar. So we will be back on Zoom webinar, and I believe we're going to, Mary, can you help me on this question? Will we be posting on the website the links? Are we going to do what we did before and create different links for all the different webinars and posting them on the website? Is that what you're going to do? Or are we going to?
Yeah.
Okay, and we can
Yeah.
always do it. We can always do it a couple of weeks in advance as well, and we don't have to
Okay.
do the entire year. But that might be better, is just to do a month or 2 at a time. All right, guys, you guys asked excellent questions. I wish we had time to answer them all. But we love you very much and we're glad you're here. Hopefully you have access to, thanks guys, this is great. I'm looking at all your comments there. There we go. Now everybody's typing in the chat. Thanks guys. So yes, Donna. Oh, Donna, hi Donna. Donna Crockett Heath, dear friend. Yes, that's the Earthship home in Mountaineer. Okay, guys, so we will be back next month and we'll see you in about a month from now. Also, if you didn't get to any of the links, if you go on Lynn's website, crviewer.com, that's crviewer.com. That's Lynn's website. My website is intuitivespecialist.com with an S at the end of specialists. You'll find all the goodies there. Look for free stuff. We both have Lynn has free resources. I have free stuff. That's what the tabs are called. So just look for that, guys. There's tons of free stuff. You can see the calendar of classes. You can see everything on the website. So thank you guys so much. And we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.